Hello, everyone. My name is ThermaJean Jones, and I am the chair of health science and histology at St. Phillips College. It's a privilege, and I am really excited to talk about how we as women, young women, can break the glass on these male dominated occupations. It is time for us to make a difference. I will talk about some historical facts. I'll tell you a little bit about my story. While I feel that there's so much gender resistance, but speaking about gender resistance, we must have gender support. How does St. Philip's College give you some options? What are some solutions? And then I will end with a good luck, giving you a few tips, hopefully to move you past the dominated society and getting you into an occupation that you feel that you can make a difference. I want you to walk in your passion, whether it is a male dominated occupation or an occupation that has been fairly and open to all. So let's talk about non-traditional careers. They say it refers to careers that are usually filled by one gender. Well, right off the top of my head, I really haven't seen too many concrete, construction, women-owned business. We have a few here in San Antonio, but that's just a few. I would say that it's less than the 25% because non-traditional occupations are occupations for which individuals from one gender comprise less than 25%. And that gender is usually females. So women in male dominated occupations, we face a lot of challenges. And there's a lot of coping skills that we have to develop. There's ways that we have to work in this male dominated environment in order for us to not only advance, but just to retain ourselves. And why has this occurred? Because work predominantly chosen by women are occupations such as restaurant businesses, things that deal with our children, um, early childcare, nursing. Most women look to occupations that have more of the domestic and caring aspect. But I want to tell you that we can thrive in all environments. So, a little bit about my story. I was in the United States military. Every branch of the military is male dominated because it is less than 25% women in each military organization. So in the United States Navy, it's still sad to say that I joined in the 80s and we were at that time, looking back at history, less than 15%. As of today, in 2021, we are only 17%. 17.9% in the reserves and guards, 14.4 in active duty. So I was very blessed to spend 25 years in the military active duty. I raised my hand on my birthday. I was from the inner city of Cleveland, and there was not much that women could do at that time to travel, see the world. As I said, I was very lucky. My cousin, she had joined the military and she was in Puerto Rico. And I was like, Puerto Rico? Like, oh my gosh, what an opportunity for me. And so I was pretty blessed. I joined there on my birthday when I turned 18 years old. And from there, my career started. So my career started in Orlando, Florida, when I had an opportunity to go to boot camp. And boot camp is when we trudge through the fields, we hold our rifles, our guns, we have a brother company, we were their sister company, we did everything together besides stay in the same barracks. I learned to shoot, of course, run, how to swim and tread lightly, just using pants, anything that our male counterparts did, we did as well. And then my first duty station after coming out of boot camp was Great Lakes. And that to me was my first eye opener what a male dominated area was. So being a hospital corpsman and having to go to basic A school, hospital corpsmen are those who go out in the field. They serve on a ship, they serve in clinics, they serve in every aspect of, in every environment that a military personnel would be in. And so I was very unlucky that first duty station to serve at Great Lakes because it's freezing cold. It's below zero at times. And I'm standing outside with my rifle at checkpoints to let cars in or people in after they show their military ID to allow them access to the base. Because when you are coming out of boot camp, you still serve what we call sentry duty. And was practically served by males. But we had to stand that post. And that was extremely difficult for me because I couldn't understand. It was like, I'm out here by myself in the middle of the night at 4 and 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to protect an installation and then having to call cops for backup. So that was very strange to me, but it was my first duty serving in the military. So after Great Lakes, that is where I had an opportunity to start to excel. I went to Naval Hospital, Millington, Tennessee, and had an opportunity to work the emergency room. At that time, we started what we called emergency medical technician, which, as you see today, is still a male-dominated emergency medicine. If you go into the ER, you'll see a lot of ER doctors who are male. A lot of the EMTs who travel on the ambulance are male. You have few women who go out on ambulance runs because it can be a very scary situation to become involved in an accident. You going to render care and you have a very large group of people around you and they're looking for that male to direct things, and they kind of disassociate or not pay attention to the female who's actually rendering care. I've had that happen to me on more than one occasion. And at that time I was young, so I kind of just went with it. Not much else that I could do at that time. But then I had an opportunity to become EVOC, which is Emergency Vehicle Operating Course. And the Emergency Vehicle Operating Course allowed me to learn how to drive the ambulance and maneuver out on aircraft fields, which was really important because in Millington, Tennessee, we also had our runways available for our aircraft that came in and out of the area. And that's one of the places that we had to render care to as well. Had an opportunity, I don't know if you want to call it an opportunity, to see one of the pilots eject. And when he ejected from his aircraft, then the ambulance was called so that we could render support and make sure that he was stabilized and transport him back to the main hospital. However, it could get really tricky because, as I told you, a woman or a female has to also react to very tough environments. We were called to a club. In our area, we call it the military base club. And of course, there's drinking, alcohol, people were fighting. Someone got a little bit carried away, bust a bottle, cut a guy across his face. And when you arrive there, you have to actually call for police to be available to come in with you to clear the crowd, um, and so that you could do your job. So again, not a female dominated area to work in the emergency room. And then I had a great opportunity to go to San Diego, California. Now in San Diego, that's when I learned the difference between being in the field and having an opportunity to go home and sleep in your own bed at night. Because I was assigned to a psychiatric unit there, and being in San Diego at Balboa Hospital, which is now the Starship of Navy Medicine, we who work a lock unit, I believe that at that time I could probably count 5 females being on a lock psych unit. It was more acceptable to have large males there because most of the gentlemen or few females would come through with anxieties or mental health. But if they, what we say, they became very anxious, out of control, then it would be like maybe brute force and not always just having a conversation with someone um, to get them to calm down. And so many times that they had to use restraints on people, then I really learned that, you know, female, we have to learn different tactics and how to handle ourselves in that type of environment when we don't have the strength or brute force to subdue someone. But getting back to the story about being in San Diego and really learning the differences, that I was assigned to a Marine Corps unit up at Camp Pendleton, which was only an hour or so away from San Diego. And that's when you spend your nights out in the field, as we call marching, humping, making sure that the area was secure, making sure that the troops who are out there are healthy, if they're injuring themselves. And so many nights I would spend myself out in the tents. We had both male tents and female tents, but everything was controlled in a manner so that we stayed safe. But there were very few females out in the fields. Again, the military is a male dominated society. And then the opportunity, I toured in Guam and came back to San Diego. So this time coming back to San Diego, I was a little bit more seasoned now, and it didn't require me to go out in the field, but my specialty was still psychiatric technician. And this is where I start to see a lot more bias, because the males who were psych techs had opportunities to deploy. The females could not deploy with our psychiatric intervention teams. It was only males who could deploy, and we would stay back on the units, provide care to clients and patients who would come through, as well as family support. But when you don't deploy in the military, then that weakens your chance to advance, to move up in rank. When you're not placed in hazardous duty areas, that again weakens your ability to be promoted. Because when we look at promotion, we look at those people who have, I don't want to say sacrificed more, but been placed more in harm. Like if you were out to sea, if you were out in the field, and women who work in psychiatry were not allowed to deploy. And so even through Desert Shield and Desert Storm, we were not on psychiatric intervention teams, and we wind up staying in place, and that took away opportunities for advancement and opportunities for pay. Because anytime you placed in hazardous duty or doing any type of the um, Desert Shield, Desert Storm situations, then you will also receive hazardous duty pay. And none of the females would, because we wasn't allowed to deploy. So my first deployment became on the USS Emrius land, AS-39, a submarine support ship. And that was definitely another male dominated area. At that time, I was in preventive medicine, and preventive medicine required us to uh, go down to engineering, where there was no females in engineering, to monitor the safety of heat stress, to also monitor ship's quarters, to monitor galleys, to monitor um, our outside decking area. We had many females who actually worked in our medical unit on ship, but did not work in any of the hazardous. Like, we had radiation health. Our radiation health officer was a male. Our commanding officer, both of them were male, even though we were on female and male ship. At that time, both of the high ranking officers were male. So the military still today is not as accepting to females trying to reach in some of the very strongholds that have always been held by men. I had an opportunity to be stationed in England. And in England, I found myself faced with a lot of civilians who worked on the base who were not used to having preventive medicine as females. And so I would do inspections throughout the base. I would go to like commissaries, or like our HEBs, inspect those areas as well, and found myself always getting a lot of pushback, like, why are you marking us down for this? Or why did you find this discrepancy in that? And sometimes I would always wonder, is it that you're fighting against the discrepancy that I found, or is the pushback coming because I'm a female and you're not used to having females? And if you look up here to this picture, when I was stationed in Bahrain, right here, my friend and myself, we were the only two female chiefs at that time in our building. And then the male counterparts, again, the younger males would always seem like they would divert or go towards requests with the male chiefs instead of the female chiefs. And a little bit more accommodating as they began to get to know us, and found out that we were actually hand in hand doing all the type of work as any other male chiefs there. So that was one of the things that I've learned and had to deal with, and things that you will probably have to deal with as women who are breaking the glass and trying to integrate yourself in these male dominated areas. Oh, I skipped one. San Antonio, Texas. When I came to San Antonio, I worked for Defense Military Medical Readiness. It's a DMRTI. It's a medical readiness training unit that served throughout the world. And we would have groups go out to the different areas, not only in the United States, but overseas, to train firsthand on medical recovery. Another environment that was very biased, because I think in my area, we may have 5 women working, but we were not the ones being deployed. And me, myself, I'm never deployed outside of the United States with that actual command. And so you will find that you might get your foot in the door, but there are other things that will inhibit you from moving forward. So education, I kind of shared some of my story with you, but what has made a difference for me? This is after coming out of the military, I found that I had to start improve myself once more and again. So this is me graduating from San Antonio College. Um, I had moved from doing environmental health and wanted to do something different and expand myself. And this is when I had my associates in business and geriatric studies. And then from there, it wasn't enough. So women, females, it will not be enough for you, depending on what your career model is, to just stop at an associate's degree. St. Phillips College, I feel like, is a stepping stone for many women to get certifications, to begin entry-level positions, but there's a strong need for you to go further. You might hear a cliche, it takes more for, to advance as a woman than it does for a man. And I believe that is true. So from there, I was able to go to Texas A&M here in San Antonio and not only get my bachelor's in business, but also my master's in business. Then from there, I figured I wouldn't stop. And I went to the University of Little Rock in Arkansas and got a master's in counseling. And now currently I'm attending Texas State in San Marcos. So that was my story. But let's talk about this. Between 1990 and 2000, the percentage of women was steadily increasing, but we always have stayed below 25%. Remember, keep key that 25% is what classifies a gender specific occupation. So if it's more than 25% of one gender in the occupation, then no longer is it considered dominated by one gender. Now, this is to me, also a wake up call, because being an African American, there was only 18.3% African Americans in the military. So think about that. Less than 14% women on active duty, and then less than 20% African American. So if you're a minority, I know St. Philip's College is a Hispanic Serving Institute, and at this time there's only 9.0, and this was 2004, and things have really not changed greatly. So gender resistant. Why is there so much gender resistance for females to break into these male dominated areas? Pay. It's all about the money. It's usually all about the money. So there's a extreme gender pay gap. Most women in the labor market look to jobs that, as I said before, are more domesticated, because they can receive adequate pay. So if you have a male child care provider and he's making $22 an hour, and you're a female child care provider, you're probably going to make $22 per hour. But if you are a female going into construction, you may only make $18 an hour, but your male counterpart is making $25 an hour. So many people, or many organizations and businesses, try to push women out of the area, all right? And so that they can have it more open to men to come in. So this is a trend. Remember, occupational integration since the 1960s. I talked a little bit at the beginning about the 24th Amendment, that when you have amendments to let women vote and stop denying them the opportunity, no matter how much they made, because remember, in that period of time, you used to have to pay a poll tax or pass a literacy test. Well, if most of the women were staying at home, rearing children, taking care of other family members, they didn't complete their education. And so previously, they were not voting at all. So the gender pay gap is real. It's definitely real. I talked a little bit about hazardous pay. How many women do you know are on the oil rigs? We're in Texas and oil rigs were booming, huge. Several years ago, you could go and get a occupational health certificate. Males could work out in the fields and work for $30, $40 an hour, right? Because it's a hazardous job. Rigs that are out to sea are a very hazardous job as well. I had an opportunity to go aboard a rig. First climbing that rig was pretty difficult, but being out there with them and withstanding all of the climate changes, and being very cautious about wherever you walk, um, that to some that to some degree was a pretty scary situation. So hazardous pay, being out on those seagoing jobs, that gives you additional pay. Specialty pays for your certificates. Many people complete a certificate and only pick up one. It's always good to look for opportunities where you can have more than one certificate, as in my case, more than one degree, so that I can show flexibility. And those are things that you're going to have to show, because there are still people who are gender resistant and not allowing women into these occupations where they can pick up a hazardous pay as well as maybe a C pay or specialty pays for their certifications. So career enhancement is definitely stifled when you don't have multiple areas that you can, multiple resources, in this case, certificates or educations that you can rely upon. And the gender division of labor. One of the things that I found out is that women are more likely to work fewer hours. And I know this is not a open webinar, but if it could be, I would say, why do you think so? We're working fewer hours because we're caregivers, especially now COVID-19. You're caring for family members. Basically, you're staying at home, but many of the males in your home are allowed to leave to continue to work, or even just leave the inside environment. But the females are still looked upon as the one who would be the main caregiver, which actually keeps them from advancing, right? Keeps them from getting that education or that certificate. And we are basically, women leave the labor force. And why do we leave the labor force? If we choose to have children, right? There's no reason why you wouldn't want to have a child if it's your choice, but that will require you to step out of the labor force for a period of time. And because of the the, the decrease in pay, it may be easier financially for you to stay at home and care for your own child, maybe the first 3 or 4 years until daycare is available. So, because of that, women are more likely to leave the workforce, and that increases the gap in pay. So, here's what it looks like: women earn 82 cents for every $1 earned by a man. I'm like, why? I'm doing the same work, I'm pulling the same hours, I have the same certification, and in some cases, I have more certification and education than my male counterpart. So women earn 98 cents for every dollar earned by men. And this is in some of the controlled gender pay gap areas. So what happens there is basically jobs that are government subsidized or actually government jobs, they have placed laws and policies in place to ensure that you females are paid as close as possible to the male, and in some cases, evenly. But what happens is that the male has been in the workforce longer than the female, and thus that creates a difference in pay as well. So here's a look at some of the gender division of labor. How many females out there are going to be a pilot? Right? These are areas that 26.6%, there is a wage difference. These are the top 15 US occupations by adjusted gender gap. And the gap is the female to male, of course. So males are getting higher pay. Professors right at colleges because they've been in the job market for many more years than the female has. All right. Faculty administrators, currently I'm considered an administrator, and there is a large gap. My job was held by a male before I took it over, and it was a male in that position prior to that too as well. Now, I can definitely speak on medical technicians. I talked to you about being an emergency medical technician. There was always in the emergency room maybe 10% women. Maybe 10% women. So in that case, if I had 20 males working, only 2 females were there. Always a gap in that. But things should be able to change. How many commercial drivers do you have, CDLs, females driving these big rigs? Right? We're doing a lot of transportation for supplies throughout the United States using big rigs. I'm very proud to say that one of my cousins in Memphis, she's a driver, CDL, commercial driver's license, been hauling rigs, moving trucks, moving throughout the United States for years. And she at that time was the only female that I know. And I thought it was strange too. I was like, you're driving one of those 16 wheelers? Really? But she did. And that's something we need to stop looking at what we are used to and look for jobs that we can break through, make a difference, and open up the door for the next generation. So, St. Phillips College offers you many solutions, as I would like to say. Solutions in career training. We have aircraft over at Southwest Campus, construction trades at Southwest Campus, and I'm very proud to say at the Center for Health Professions, we have so many health sciences careers ranging from radiology, histology, medical lab, vision care. We have OT, which is occupational therapy. We have physical therapy available. We have in the radiology area, we have people who not only pick up their basic, they pick up specialties in sonography. You've heard of MRIs. That's another certificate that you can also excel to. I like to know that in the automotive trades, we have women who are now signing up, making a difference. I mean, I like cars personally, 2, 3, 4 of them if I can afford them, but I couldn't work on them. And automotive is really growing because of technology. We have Tesla to open up a factory in Austin. Just imagine working for Tesla and getting a discount to have one of those really Model 4s. That's a good plus. And culinary, you mostly see chefs that are male, right? It is time for us to make a transition and have more females, not just pastry, involved in the culinary arts. So that's what St. Phillips College can offer you. That's just a little bit of what St. Philip's could offer you as a female who is willing to break that ceiling on a male dominated occupation. And remember, male dominated occupation or gender dominated occupations is when it has 25% of less of one gender. So I put here all job positions at the Alamo College are open to females. Today, chair of health sciences, that's me. And then the previous last two chairs, again, I said that were male. So I think it's really time. So this is me when I first came to St. Phillips College. I have a specialty, I told you, in preventive medicine, and we would do the occupational safety and health courses. I would instruct those. I would have on full level mop gear, making sure that people knew how to use respirators, how to decontaminate an area. I would have drills outside of San Antonio College because that's what I was used to. That's how I was trained. Full drills all the time, getting people in and out of spaces that were what we call restricted areas, very restricted for them, going down in tunnels and being able to come out successfully, making sure they had the respiratory gear and O2 or oxygen available for themselves. And that's some of the things that we was actually instructing over at St. Philip's College. This building is no longer there, but that's what I used to do. And here is one of my certificates, which is Field Identification of Biological Warfare. Definitely a male-dominated area in the military, but it was part of preventive medicine. And during the time that we had the Iraqi conflicts, and we were checking to make sure that biologicals wasn't in the food or biologicals wasn't being used out in some of the field areas. Had an opportunity to go to Kuwait to check on that. Had an opportunity to go to Africa, Djibouti area to discuss and talk about biological warfare and chemicals and how they're used. So not only was it a chance to be in a male-dominated area, also an area that was science focused. And many women need to start pushing themselves and moving towards what we call STEM, technology, as well as mathematics, engineering, and sciences. So that was real important. And this is just one of the things we learned in FIBWA, training and diagnostics of biologicals, to ensure that we wasn't being, as we say, we wasn't being infiltrated with that. And that's going to be a field that's still continuing, especially with food. Believe it or not, a lot of the FDA areas, they're testing, checking foods because we're global, being shipped in from all over the world to ensure that there's not any chemicals or biologicals in those as well. Okay. So as I end, I just want to say that we have a lot of opportunity, but we have to make different choices. As a female, you have to make different choices. I'm not saying that you should just leave home and just focus on yourself, but there's going to be times that it may not be a great time to have a family. It may be a time that you have to focus on your career. If you make a different choices about work and careers now at a very early age and gain the education that you need to advance, to gain the education that you can get into some of these male-dominated areas that are already higher paying, and push the envelope and getting the specialty paid by picking up the certificates. If you do that now, you have longevity in your career. So in my case, I waited. I was in the military, and that's when I learned how to maneuver. But the additional education and certificates to help me be more flexible and help me advance, I did not pick those up until my adult life. So one of the statistics says that in 2013, households with children younger than 6 years old, you only had 38.4 minutes per day that the male was actually caring for the child. And the rest of the time, the females at the home were caring for the child. So if I say good luck to you, my good luck and my tip to you is to start the education early, pick up as many certificates as you can early, because women, you're efficient, you're ambitious if you want to be, you're very powerful in the society now as we see things are changing. And we don't want to go back because of COVID-19 and all the caregiving by women. I see an opportunity for us to slip down the hill. And that's not what I want. I want to see more professors. I want to see more chefs that are female. I want to see more pilots that are female, more biologists that are female, that are identifying all these assays as we have, and we check those in chemistry as well as biology to ensure that nothing has been infiltrated into our food, nothing has been infiltrated into our water. And you can make the difference. You can be that person. So I thank you for listening to my story. I hope that there's something that you picked up. And if you ever need to contact me, feel free. My name is ThermaJean Jones. I work at the Center for Health Professions, and I will be more than happy to sit down and talk with you and help you maybe map out some opportunities, because I believe that there's nothing that a male can do as far as work wise in an occupation that a female cannot do. So good luck to you. Have a great day as you continue in WINTO and keep pushing those non traditional occupations.